Hey, Pretty Girl Club. So I want to start an unpopular opinion series. I guess I will consider my last video on Meg the Stallion to be the kickoff. And when it comes to this whole skin tone thing, skin tone is subjective. It always will be. There will never be a consensus on what's considered light skin, what's considered dark skin. Have you ever noticed how nobody argues when you call yourself dark skinned? Nobody really argues for the most part when you call yourself brown. But suddenly, if you call yourself light skinned or red bone, like Meg the Stallion, or caramel, like Chili, if you call yourself anything light skinned, then suddenly people want to argue back and forth. They'll start making videos about you. They will create lipstick alley threads about you. And I've said this before, if you police it, you're pedestalizing it. People pedestalize being a light skinned woman so much so to the point where we've got millions of non light skinned women arguing back and forth about who's light skinned and who's not, pulling up pictures of celebrities in the winter and in the summertime and then comparing their skin tone to other light-skinned celebrities. I've also noticed that black women love to move the goalpost for what's light skin. So for example, if you say that Ella Mai is light skinned, or if you say Alicia Keys is light skinned, they'll say they're not light skinned, they're not even on the skin tone scale because they're biracial, they're mixed race. Cardi B is not light skinned because Cardi B is mixed, so she's not even on the skin tone scale. If you want to be light skinned, you have to have 2 black parents and 4 black grandparents. So then when I say, okay, light skinned Keisha and Meg the Stallion, I know her mom has admixture. I know her mother is Creole. But let's just say, for example, light-skinned Keisha and Meg the Stallion, okay, then they would be light-skinned then. If they are fully black or more than 80% black, like mainly unambiguous black women, right? So then they would be the new standard of light skin. Then suddenly, when I made my video about Meg the Stallion, some people were saying, oh, well, no, they don't count. You have to be like, basically, they're trying to do the paper bag test. But then if I, as a light-skinned woman, were to ever bring up the paper bag test or give a dark-skinned woman a paper bag test, I would be called a disgusting colorist. So the paper bag test is colorist, yet black women can use the paper bag test themselves to make people not light-skinned. And then if you were to ever use the paper bag test on them, you would be a colorist. Another hypocrisy I've noticed is that the standard of light skin for men is way darker than what it is for women. Like I've seen some blogs and stuff like on Lipstick Alley where in order to be light skinned, you have to be lighter than Mariah Carey. Basically, you have to be like white passing. But then for men, they call men like T.I., August Alsina, Shamar Moore, Boris Kojo, Hill Harper, Michael Ealy, The Game, the rapper, Russell Wilson. All these guys are light-skinned without a problem. Will Smith. I've heard of so many guys being called. In fact, I've actually even heard Michael B. Jordan being called light-skinned multiple times. So half of these guys that I just named, I personally have never thought about their skin tones that deeply to where I would call them light skin, but I have heard them being called light skin on the internet. But suddenly, if you are Meg the Stallion, then you don't count. And it's like they're constantly moving the goalpost for light skin. First, you have to have 2 black parents and 4 black grandparents to be a light skinned black woman. But then they'll say light skinned Keisha or Meg the Stallion, they don't count as light skin. You have to be like Alicia Keys to be light skin. But then it's like Alicia Keys is biracial. I thought you guys said biracials are non-black. So if you are non-black and you're a mixed race, then you are not even on the skin tone scale at all. And so this is why I say skin tone is subjective. There's never going to be a consensus on what's light skin and what's dark skin. We did do a vote on this channel of what we're going to consider light skin just for editing purposes so I don't confuse people. So here on this channel, we voted on Fenty Shades 390 and above, which is basically like a caramel or light brown skin tone and above. By the way, is dark brown skin dark skinned? Then why is light brown skin not light skinned? That's another thing. People act like you can't be light skinned and be brown at the same time. We are people of color. So last time I checked, people of color are not just naturally born with white skin. So technically, we all are brown. Look up these words in the dictionary. Beige is a shade of brown. Tan is a shade of brown. So technically, yes, Alicia Keys would be brown. Doja Cat would be brown. Beyonce would be brown. Everybody would be brown. And this is why you hear non-black people calling themselves brown all the time. I've heard Hispanic people call themselves brown. I've heard Indian people call themselves brown. So once again, skin tone is subjective. And then for those of you who are like, oh, well, what if people are lying about being mixed, or they are lying about being light-skinned? What if they're bleachers? What if they're basically fake, or like a fake light-skinned person or a fake mixed person? My response is, I would give the same response as dark-skinned black women who wear curly weaves. You don't have to have naturally curly hair to wear a curly weave. If you want to represent my phenotype, if you want to represent my curly hair texture because you think it's so pretty to the point where you want to represent my phenotype in front of thousands of people, I'm flattered by that. I don't have a problem with that because you're helping build my pedestal. You're helping build my representation. You are helping to diversify the representation of my phenotype. So even if Meg Thee Stallion, if some people don't consider her light skinned, okay, well, if she identifies more with being light skinned, or if she is subjectively comparing herself to unambiguous dark skinned black women, and in that case, yes, she would be correct that compared to dark skinned black women, she is considered light. So she would be light compared to them. So that's another issue. Why is whiteness always the standard for light skinned? Why can't blackness be the standard for light skin? Like if Meg Thee Stallion or light skinned Keisha or whoever, if these people are saying, hey, compared to dark skinned unambiguous black women, I would be the lightest or I would be light skinned. I don't really care. Like I don't have a problem with that if that's how they're describing it. And also, if somebody is a fake light skin or, bleachers, or if you want to call them fake light skins or whatever, fake mixed people, once again, if they identify more with the light-skinned phenotype and identity, or if they feel prettier with being light-skinned, or they feel like that skin tone range is absolutely drop dead gorgeous, kind of the golden skin tone or whatever, if they think that my skin tone is so beautiful and gorgeous to the point where they want to represent it in front of millions of people on their album and talk about being a red bone or talk about being caramel or whatever, then once again, that's not an insult. That's actually a compliment to me. I'm flattered by that. I am flattered by the fact that people think that my skin tone range is so beautiful to the point where they choose to represent me in the media. So what's wrong with that? And this is where dark-skinned black women shoot themselves in the foot because on the one hand, they will try to beg others to be their representation, but then on the other hand, when someone finally does want to represent them, like Viola Davis or whatever, then they will bash them and say, we don't like these pictures, or like, those little child models that were dark-skinned with 4C hair and their hair was in a messed up ponytail, then suddenly dark-skinned black women are like, oh no, they can't represent us. But guess what? Us light-skins, we don't have that same energy. We don't feel the need to police people because ultimately we are not pedestalizing light skin tones. We just feel like, hey, whoever wants to represent us, or depending on your experience and your identity and who you're comparing yourself to, that's fine. Everybody is light skinned to someone. Everybody is dark skinned to someone. Like I said, I do have my own opinion, and we already voted on that on this channel. But if somebody has a different opinion than me, I'm not threatened by that, especially if that person is calling themselves light skinned. That's my community, so I don't have a problem with people diversifying the light skin community, or if the standard is different in the South or whatever, or if the standard is different if you base it on blackness, then I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. And also for the people who say like, oh, these people are bleaching themselves, these people are getting surgeries and stuff, or they're trying to make themselves look lighter in their filters. Okay, well, once again though, making yourself look lighter in filters, you're still representing my phenotype with that filter. You're still representing my phenotype with that bleaching or whatever. So once again, I will never bash people who choose to make fashion or beauty decisions that benefit my phenotype or that cause me to have more representation in the media. You guys know how important media representation is and how it affects how you are perceived as far as beauty goes. And so it's like, if somebody who is beautiful wants to represent my phenotype, then that's fine. All they're doing is they're going to make me be seen as more beautiful in everyday life. And for the BWE content creators who say that beauty doesn't trickle down, yeah, beauty doesn't trickle down if you don't look like the people who are considered beautiful. But beauty does trickle down if you do look like the people who are considered beautiful. So if you actually do look like Beyonce, like if your phenotype actually looks like that, like Beyonce or one of these other girls, then actually, yes, the trickle down effect does work. And so once again, we've got this pathetic thing where unambiguous black women are begging or even trying to bully Meg the Stallion into being their representation. And I personally have never viewed her as dark skinned. Some people are trying to say she looks lighter now than she did in the past. But once again, that's a part of being a lighter skinned person. You can pick and choose how light skinned you want to be. Unambiguous people, they don't experience that because they're dark skinned, all year round. Whether they're using vitamin C, not using vitamin C, whether they're using alpha hydroxy acids or not, using kojic acid or not, that's the case for unambiguous dark skinned black women. But that's not the case for those who have a lighter skin tone. And for those of you who are saying you have to have two black parents in order to be light skinned, well, then that means that light brown is undeniably the standard of light skin then. And also, who died and made random commenters on the internet the king and queen over who gets to decide who's light skinned or not? And why is it always non-light skinned people arguing over who's light skinned and who's not? Notice how us actual light skins don't care? Because we're not pedestalizing that skin tone. We've grown up with that skin tone our whole lives, so we're not really over here like, oh, well, so-and-so's too dark, like she can't be a part of the group. Like, well, no, it depends on where people are from. So if she was from a place where she was always the lightest and she had the same experiences that we talk about on this channel, like maybe she was called light skinned as a nickname, or maybe her hair was pulled or whatever, or she was made fun of for being too pale and she identifies more with that experience, then that is her opinion. I just think it's hilarious how people will say skin tone is subjective, but then suddenly if you say, okay, I'm light skinned, then suddenly it's no longer subjective. Only dark skinned people get to decide whether or not you're light skinned. No. Dark skinned, unambiguous people need to realize that us light skinned people, we don't care what skin tone category you guys try to put us in. Meg the Stallion doesn't care. Chloe and Halle Bailey don't care. They're going to call themselves whatever they want. And they all call themselves light skinned. And also, why is it that someone can be light-skinned and they can't be brown at the same time? Light-skinned people can still be brown because we're all people of color. So, light-skinned people can get a tan just like anyone else. If you were naturally born with maybe a deep caramel skin tone, then you can tan all the way into being cocoa if you choose to, or you can decide to stay out of the sun. But unambiguous women, they can't say, oh, you know what? I woke up this morning. Let me just stay out of the sun and use some vitamin C so I can get light skin privilege. Unambiguous people don't have that option. And so to pretend that they do, that's disingenuous. That is replacing unambiguous dark-skinned black women. They complain so much about being replaced, but that's because they try to replace themselves. They will try to bully Chloe and Halle into representing their phenotype. They tried to bully Beyonce into representing their phenotype. They're begging Meg the Stallion to represent their phenotype. I already talk about this a lot on this channel for Exoticals. We're not going to beg anyone to represent our phenotype because that looks pathetic and self-hating. We are going to represent our own phenotype because at the end of the day, especially when it comes to celebrities, they can pick and choose what phenotype they want to represent. Well, really everyone can. So this is why a lot of mixed race women with curly hair, this is why a lot of us say our curly hair is beautiful, because we've got people who choose to represent our hair texture rather than maybe their own unambiguous phenotype. So people will pick and choose who they want to represent. So even if somebody is doing it in a way that's fake, like wearing a wig, or let's say they lighten their skin or something, okay, but they're still choosing to represent light skin and curly hair. So it is still popularizing light skin or curly hair. Also, the definition of light and dark skin, it varies across cultures. So, for example, I forgot to upload the story time. Maybe I'll do it sometime this week, but I always identified as being dark skinned. And for reference, I took a picture of my hand yesterday. So here's a picture of my hand. This is me. I was not in the sunlight. I specifically took the picture on a rainy day. I'm standing in like the shadiest part of the trail underneath some trees so that you guys can see any sort of brown shades in there. But the term dark skin is subjective as well. So for example, when I was growing up, I always considered this skin tone shade, like Alicia Keys' shade, Tia and Tamara, Beyonce, all those people, I considered that dark skinned because I grew up in one of the whitest states in America. So in my high school, anyone that was the Kardashians shade or darker, they called dark skinned. I remember them calling the Kardashian girls dark skinned. And so the way that I saw it was the same way. If you are the Kardashian skin tone or darker, you're considered dark skinned. But obviously, that was because I was making whiteness my standard and I was comparing to whiteness. So I felt like if you're not white passing, then you're automatically dark skinned. So in some cultures, that's how they think. But in the African American culture or like in black culture, I'm assuming that it would be the opposite. I would hope that in the black culture, that dark skinned women would be the standard of what blackness is or what blackness should look like. And I do believe that unambiguous dark skinned black women should have their own space and their own representation. And so if somebody like Meg the Stallion is next to a whole room full of unambiguous dark skinned black women, then yeah, she would be the lightest or she would be light skinned. And so once again, this is proof that skin tone is subjective. So everybody's going to have their own definition of their skin tones. You're going to be considered light to whoever is darker than you, and then you'll be considered dark to whoever is lighter than you. So even though I was called light skinned all the time by black and white people, I always assumed that when they used the term light skinned, that they were obviously comparing me to black people, not comparing me to white people, because obviously I would not be lighter than white people. But it wasn't until I saw that documentary Dark Girls that I realized, okay, wow, there is a whole experience that comes along with being kind of this chocolatey skin tone, and that's nowhere near my experience. And so to put myself, to just one drop myself and throw myself in the same experience as women who are fully monoracially unambiguous dark-skinned women, that is disingenuous. And so just like it's true for me, it's also true for other women as well, who might be a little bit darker than me. But just because they're a little bit darker than me, that doesn't mean that their light-skinned identity is invalid. And so, like I said, especially depending on where they're from as well and how they see themselves or how they grew up. Like if they grew up multiracial, multicultural, they're mixed race or something like that, then I can definitely see why they would identify more with the quote-unquote light-skinned identity, because people associate the light skin identity with automatically being mixed race, and that is another ignorant thing. But when it comes to Meg the Stallion's identity, if she identifies more with the light skinned experience or with the light skinned phenotype, then I don't really see how that's a problem. Because once again, I don't believe that light skin is an exclusive club where I have to police it because, I'm at the top of a hierarchy or something. So I don't really view it that way. I feel like if somebody is considered light-skinned in their city or in their hometown or in a certain region of the United States or in the industry or compared to unambiguous people, then that's their experience. You can't argue with people's experiences. You're just mad because her experience is different than yours. You're just mad because she doesn't want to represent your skin tone. That's literally what it is. People are jealous that Meg the Stallion, because she's so popular, they're jealous that she doesn't want to represent dark-skinned black women or brown, dark black women. They're mad that she doesn't want to represent that. They're jealous because she wants to be seen as light-skinned, or she perceives herself as light-skinned, and she wants to represent the light-skinned identity because she probably associates it with being relatable to her. She probably associates it with, looking cute or looking beautiful, and that's fine. Light skin is beautiful, just like how dark skin is beautiful. And also with Meg the Stallion, my thing is, if you look like light-skinned people, if you have similar experiences to light-skinned people, then I don't understand how suddenly you're not light-skinned. And also, has anyone ever noticed how when you are dark-skinned, they name their skin tone based on their lightest shade of the year? So like I've seen plenty of women who are dark chocolate calling themselves chocolate or milk chocolate. And then I've seen plenty of women who are chocolate calling themselves cocoa or calling themselves cinnamon. And I've never said anything because they're probably identifying with whatever their birth tone is. Maybe they don't identify with their tan skin tone, because you only have a tan for a part of the year. And so why can't Meg the Stallion do the same thing? If she can tan into being cocoa, but that's just her skin tone temporarily, then she is no longer cocoa colored when she does not have a tan. Or for those of you who say everybody's a bleacher in Hollywood, okay, well then when she is not bleaching, which she would be then, she is now then, if she's lighter, for those of you who think everybody's a bleacher, okay, so after bleaching, she's no longer dark skinned. That's like saying that Michael Jackson, after he bleached his skin, is dark skinned. Well, he may have been born darker skin, but after he bleached his skin, he is navigating through society as a light-skinned, white-passing man. And also, what a lot of people don't realize is that depending on how strongly someone identifies with their skin tone, if you try to police their identity too much, some people will lighten their skin to feel more firm in their identity, which, by the way, I do not care. I don't really care about bleachers and tanners. I don't have an opinion on it because I feel like it's your body. People are going to do what they want with their bodies. So you can shame people all you want, but people are still going to be tanning super dark and they're still going to be bleaching super light, or they're going to be getting surgeries. So if you are challenging someone's identity and saying, oh no, you're not light skinned, you have to be a little bit lighter. If that person identifies very strongly with being light skinned, they're going to say, oh, okay, well then let me just brighten back up. Let me get some vitamin C or do whatever, get some kojic acid soap, and then I'll be back to my winter shade next week. So, and then people get more mad because then they're like, oh, well, you got lighter. That reminds me of how people bullied Kylie Jenner for being ugly, and then she gets plastic surgery to become pretty, and then they're saying, well, you got plastic surgery. And it's like, well, yeah, if she wanted to be pretty, and you guys are saying, oh, no, you're not pretty enough because you have big lips, or you have small lips, you have all these other features, and then she changes them. Yeah, she's changing them so that she can feel firm in her identity of being pretty. So if she feels prettier with those surgeries, then that's how she's navigating through society. That's what she looks like now. So same thing goes for bleachers and tanners. If they change their skin tone, well, that's how they look now. That's how they're navigating through society now. That is how they are going to be perceived now. And clearly they like that because they're doing it and because they're willing to spend thousands of dollars to look that way. And then I've seen people, when they talk about Meg Thee Stallion and other rappers and stuff, they'll be like, this person wants to be light-skinned so bad, or Meg Thee Stallion wants to be light-skinned so bad. And it's like, okay, I've never heard anyone say, so-and-so wants to be dark-skinned so bad. How come you only hear people saying that about light skin? Well, it's because they pedestalize light skin. So you do realize that by saying out loud, so-and-so wants to be light-skinned so bad, you do realize that you're actually complimenting light skins and pedestalizing light skins as if being light-skinned is something to attain. When you say stuff like, so-and-so wants to be light-skinned so bad, you're saying it as if being light-skinned is goals. And so you're literally pumping up and pedestalizing light skin, and you don't even realize it. But what do you ladies think? Is skin tone subjective, or is there some rule that people are upholding that they don't want to talk about? And also, if you uphold the paper bag test, especially if you're unambiguous and you uphold the paper bag test, I don't ever want to hear you calling anybody else colorist, texturist, or featurist. Because unambiguous dark-skinned black people are the main ones who were mad about the paper bag test. And they said, oh, the Creoles were racist or whatever, and they had this paper bag test thing, and they were trying to exclude dark-skinned people. Okay, so then I don't ever want to hear you calling anybody else colorist, texturist, or featurist if you're an unambiguous dark-skinned black woman who upholds the paper bag test. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comments section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.